The rangelands of the Yemen Arab Republic. Dry, often rocky areas, rough mountain ridges and desolate mountain plateaus. Much of the Yemen is made up of such marginal lands, which are not really suited for cropping, but are of considerable significance as grazing areas for sheep and goats. The vegetation left by the grazing sheep and browsing goats is collected by local women to serve as fuel in their kitchens. Moreover, the rangelands often serve as natural catchment areas for the little rain that falls. All these functions of the rangelands are much appreciated by the local population, who benefit from them free of charge and without input. The people would like to make even more use of the natural resources of these rangelands. Through the ages, sheep husbandry and the farmer's livelihood have been largely dependent on the productivity of the rangelands. But the ecological balance has been strongly influenced by man and his stock. It's a vulnerable balance that could be easily upset by an overutilization of nature's free benefits. But times are changing, and new developments and ideas filter through to the villages and divert attention from traditional ways of life. The population of the Yemen Arab Republic is increasing. More and more inaccessible areas are opened up through roads. The interest in shepherding is diminishing. Herd boys prefer to go to school rather than spend their days on the range. Shepherds are less inclined to take their sheep far afield into the rangelands. As a consequence, sheep are kept closer to the village and are more frequently supplemented at home with crop byproducts. More and more, groundwater is used to irrigate intensified crop production. More crop byproducts are available, and the traditional role of the rangelands in sheep husbandry is changing. As a result of the changing interaction between sheep and the rangelands, the range vegetation also changes. Close to the villages, a more intensive use may lead to a disturbed balance, resulting in a degradation of the rangelands. Further afield, the situation may be the reverse. So far, little was known about the rangelands and their production potential and ecology, and little was known about the local sheep breeds and crops that play an important role in maintaining the productivity of the sheep. Since 1984, These questions are being studied by the Range and Livestock Improvement Project within the Agricultural Research Authority. Near the town of Damar, in the Central Highlands, a project was established on about 100 hectares of unimproved rangeland. Here, experts in sheep husbandry, forage production and range management and ecology are looking into the many factors that may influence the productivity of the rangelands and the sheep. The Range and Livestock Improvement Project keeps about 400 head of local Damari sheep, which are used in experiments and studies concerning health, nutrition, fertility, breeding and growth. Little was known about these so-called fat-tailed sheep, but the project has demonstrated that with a little more attention to nutrition and health, better growth and reproduction can be achieved. Identification of individual animals by means of ear tags and tattoos in the underside of the tail enable the staff to monitor their performance in each study or experimental situation. All records and observations are registered in a card system and a computer database for analysis. Sheep must be fed. At the Range and Livestock Improvement Project, indigenous and exotic forage crops are grown and tested. A sprinkler irrigation system has been installed in order to control the supply of water as required. Little was known about yields and nutritional values of local forage crops and range vegetation. Since the project helped to establish a feed laboratory as part of the agricultural research laboratories, samples of feedstuffs and fodders can now be analyzed in the country. Crop samples from the experimental plots and range sites or from village farmers are registered in the project, dried, ground and packed to be sent to the laboratory in Cees for analysis of nutritional values. The results of the project must be checked and verified in the village situation. Thus, a number of project activities are actually carried out in the villages. In most villages in the Yemen, families and their animals share the same roof without much ventilation nor hygiene. Flies, fleas and smell often form a considerable nuisance and health risk. An open shed combines a number of advantages. Cheap to construct, good ventilation and less bother with vermin and smell. The collection of sheep dung is much easier than gathering it from the dungeons in which the sheep traditionally spend their nights. In the villages, a number of activities are carried out by project-trained technicians. They check the condition and health of village sheep and provide information to be compared with the results obtained at the project. Of local importance are liver fluke and black disease. These diseases are interrelated. Studies of village flocks indicate that the control of the fatal black disease alone, via vaccination, is the cheapest and most effective way of dealing with the problem of this disease complex. Usually, sheep are fed some crop residues scattered somewhere near the house before they're taken to graze on the rangelands. Depending on the condition of these rangelands, such supplementation may be repeated after they return from grazing and before they are locked up for the night. The rangelands have always been the grazing domain of the Damari sheep. But what is the effect on these rangelands? Which plants are preferred by the sheep? How soon do plants recover from being grazed? And when do they have their greatest feeding value? When indeed is an area being overgrazed? All these questions are being studied by the research staff of the project. The answers form the basis of advice to the villagers. Research carried out by the Range and Livestock Improvement Project since 1984 clearly indicate that the A-triplex shrub can play an important role in enhancing the productivity of the rangelands. The leaves of the A-triplex shrub provide fodder which is slightly salty and rich in proteins. The A-triplex shrub prospers in rocky, shallow soil and on steep slopes, and survives with a minimum of rain. The fallen leaves litter the soil and eventually enrich it. The roots of the A-triplex shrub hold the soil and thus prevent erosion. The shrubs, when planted in hedges, act as windbreaks and stop the topsoil from being blown away. The wood of the A-triplex shrub serves as an excellent fuel, a welcome addition to an environment where trees and shrubs are scarce, and where sheep dung would be better used as manure on the fields rather than be burned as fuel.
لأنه كل ما كانت الحفرة كبير كل ما طلع الشجرة أكثر لحد بعد تسوي المي شوية 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 شوية
At the Range and Livestock Improvement Project, a first and well-documented reference collection of indigenous range plants and related vegetation has been established. It's the start of a national herbarium. More than 600 plants have by now been included, preserved and described. This herbarium constitutes an indispensable tool in range ecology research. It is also an important educational asset in the training of the Yemeni staff, just as important as the work consultations held regularly between project staff and workers. Besides direct recommendations for immediate use in the villages, research methods and results are recorded by means of project communications and extension media, in order to bring them to the attention of policymakers and make them accessible to a wider circle of interested public. Thus, the Range and Livestock Improvement Project is laying the foundation for a future policy concerning the utilization and conservation of that great asset, the natural rangelands, which are of vital importance to the well-being of the Yemeni farmers.